Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast, where we explore your hidden thoughts and desires, revealing your greatest drop the mic moments. Now, here's your host, Art Costello.
Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast. Nate Peo is my guest today. Nate has been a successful construction professional. He's a fellow podcaster. He is on a journey that I'm really, really loving and interested in, and he's got a lot of great things to say about it. He serves as the purchasing and construction agent for a successful California-based real estate company. His career includes working as a purchasing manager, project engineer, all within the country's most competitive market. He earned his MBA in business administration from Pepperdine and a BS in construction management from the University of Nebraska. The greatest thing about Nick is that he's a proud dad, loving husband, and a motivated fitness enthusiast. Nate, thank you to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
To let everybody know, we tried this one time before, last week, before this battle went on with Zoom, and we're going to try it again, and this is going to be great. So,
yeah.
Nate, can you start out by telling us your story, how your journey has gone?
Yeah. So for me, I've been on this experiment this last few months of kind of what happens if you push all the chips in, you go all in on pursuing the best version of you possible, or living up to what you believe your expectations are. And I've had a lot of success in my career, but I've also had this feeling that I didn't do everything I possibly could because I'd let self-doubt get in my way, and I would do things and then stop doing them because I would get uncomfortable. I think, hey, maybe this doesn't fall in line with my career goals. Maybe it's too different. Maybe it's too personal. So I'd push it to the side, but then this idea would always pick back up that said, hey, I want to do more with myself. I think I can be a bigger influence in people's lives, but I have to get over this uncomfortable feeling with myself. So this year I decided hey, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to do things that really push me outside of my comfort zone, which includes, for me, I feel like my gift is meeting as many people as I can and being an influence in their life. So part of that was creating a podcast, in a sense, would help spread the message a little bit further and be able to reach people I might not normally be able to connect with. So I've had this idea in my head for a long, long time. Early in my career, I set out this goal of, hey, I want to accomplish this. I want to have these personal milestones. I want to make, a certain level of income and all these things. And I'd also at the same time heard this statement that said, hey, you'll probably overestimate what you can do in a year and you'll underestimate what you can do in 5. And I kind of viewed it from the current times pushing forward. And I had this idea of hey, I'm going to try to do all these things. And I was right. In the first year, I was kind of frustrated that things weren't accelerating as fast as they could. And I wasn't really gaining the progress I was hoping for. And the goals kind of fell along the wayside. They were kind of there, but they weren't really, really, really focused on. And now 10 to 15 years later, I look back at those goals I had and I've just surpassed them by so much. So I'm looking back on that going, hey, well, if I know what I think I can accomplish in 5 years, I'm going to understate it, then why not make my current goals, my current objectives, my vision for my life really big, very grand, with a lot of just really doing a lot more of me, being more extra. And just knowing that if I do that, in 5 years, I'm going to exceed those expectations. So that's kind of the journey I've been on in the last 6 months, which is really a reflection back on the last 20 years of my career, where it's brought me to.
Yeah, what I really love about this is that it's much in line with my teachings about the greater our expectations are, the greater our performance is. We know it's true with athletes. The research I've done with working with athletes, we know that when they take small incremental expectations in their performance and they keep on trying to exceed those small expectations, their success just keeps rising on a steady level till they're at their peak performance. And, a lot of people ask me, what happens when I get to that peak performance? How do I go beyond it when I think I'm at my peak performance? Well, you just answered your own question. Because when you get to your peak performance, you raise the bar and you keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. And, the thing that really interests me and I want people to understand is you talked about stepping outside your comfort zone. that is the single biggest challenge that almost every human being has on the face of this earth, because they have that fear in them, that fear that somebody's going to say something about this, somebody's going to do something. It's always this idea in our heads that we're just not good enough. We're just, maybe that we think we are good enough, but we just don't believe we are good enough. Mm-hmm. How did you get beyond that point of, there's a point in our lives where we just say, okay, I'm going to go just do it, and I'm just going to make this happen. And taking that step of faith that moves you into the place where you're at right now, which I think is really, really very beautiful and commendable to you, that you're stepping into who you're truly meant to be, because I believe that's what happens when you get to that point.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of things that go into that. And one is probably watching other people do it. And there's a point in my career, there's actually probably a few points in my career where I was in the same starting point as somebody that I gave up and they continued. And they were just little things. They're not like massively huge undertakings. It was really some people that were just getting going when Instagram was first coming out, and when like Facebook and LinkedIn had just came out. And they were actually social media coaches for a wine shop me and my wife owned at the time. And they were like, hey, do these things on Instagram, do these things on Facebook, do these things on YouTube, and you'll grow your business. And I didn't feel comfortable or smart enough or good enough to be doing videos about the wine shop. So like, I didn't do it, and I would hold back from fear doing it. And that's not why the wine shop wasn't successful. But fast forward to today, those same people that started off as like these beginner coaches, and I don't mean beginner like they were just starting with no expert experience, but they were just getting going, and they were like just starting out, and they stuck with it. And now they're like, one of these women, she owns like a super successful B2B marketing agency that she founded off of just starting off to coach small businesses like ourselves. And I look at that and I go, hey, that person just stuck with it. And I didn't stick with it. Now, I may not have the same success as she did, but I definitely would have been in a better starting point if I had continued with it. So I look back at that as a chance where like, hey, I really doubted myself to continue going forward. So once I identified like, hey, I've been getting in my own way a lot of times, I just need to commit to doing something every day for a year, and just regardless if it feels good or feels uncomfortable, just you put it out there. So since I've been on this mission to connect with as many people and see where these relationships go and build a podcast, it requires being more vulnerable. It requires being more open. It requires being more relatable to people online, especially people I don't know, in probably an area that I don't feel an expert always at, which is, self-help, self-growth, and encouraging others to be their best version of themselves. So then I start looking at, and this is recently kind of came to me, is like, a lot of times we look into ourselves and say it's us, it's just our own discipline. But I find that anybody that's done anything really, really big has always had a team of people with them. They've always had support. They've always had, they just never really did it all on their own. They've always had some level of other people influencing them, pulling them up. So for me, it started being, okay, now I've identified that I need to get over myself and just do things. Now I need some accountability, and I need to surround myself with people that are encouraging and supportive and kind of like on this path together, because if they're doing it, I'm doing it. If I'm doing it, they're doing it. And there's a bit of accountability. So there hasn't been anything like formally structured, like if you do this, I'll do this, but it's combining like ideas and sharing knowledge and friendship and interacting with people that are kind of in the same mindset. And you're like, hey, if they're doing it, I can do it. And then you find out that they think the same to you. Like, hey, if they're doing it, I can do it. And this motivation kind of builds up, because a lot of times motivation, it's fleeting. We wake up in the morning like, I'm supposed to do something. I need to make a Facebook post, or I'm supposed to record somebody on a podcast, and I don't really feel like being all chit-chatty this morning, but you get up and you do it anyways. And then when it's all over, you're like, wow, that was so exciting talking to that person. I'm so glad I had that conversation, because if I just sat at home and did nothing, I wouldn't have felt that lifting energy up. And then maybe like a few years from now, I'd look back on it and go, hey, I really wish I had done more. I said no too many times when I should have been saying yes. So that's kind of like this roundabout long answer of like how I started stepping out of my comfort zone. But it's really, I think, is finding people that are going to encourage you to do the things you want to do, that you feel some accountability and you feel some dependence, that you're answering to somebody else, and that the calling is bigger than just yourself, but really more of a deep cause.
Yeah, it's really great because I hear this from people a lot. People that are starting out and just building their reputation and their businesses and all this. It's very common, and I think back on my life, and I just never had anybody that I could lean on and trust. And I had to create that all myself because I grew up in a different time and era. I mean, there's a lot of years difference between you. I'm 72, going to be 73 in August. And I would imagine you're probably late 30s, somewhere in there.
Actually 44. So
hey, you look good.
Thank you.
The need to have closure in any given situation is sheer human nature. And when it comes to romantic relationships, this desire skyrockets. Has your previously failed relationship left you in immense pain? It's not uncommon for people to shy away from a new relationship after their first one fails miserably. The fear of the unknown makes them hide in a shell to prevent any future heartbreak. Relatable? Despite wanting to love and be loved, you can't take the plunge if your mind and heart are still locked somewhere in the past. Maybe you aren't aware of the power of releasing the past, or perhaps you don't know how to do it. Art Costello in his online course teaches the art of moving on from bad places to happier, more stable ones. This course can change your life for good, helping you beat all kinds of negativity on the road to eternal bliss. Sign up now before the gloominess gets the better of you at expectationacademy.com.
I think the time error, it has a lot to do with that because I did not grow up with any kind of computer systems or any kind of self-help. I actually, when I was younger, I read Norman Vincent Peale, Emmett Fox. I don't know if you know any of these people, but they're probably the originators of the self-help industry long before the Tony Robbins and, the people that are very successful today. Mm-hmm. So, those were my influences. But for me, I had to figure out everything on my own. And I'm really probably good at it, figuring out things on my own. And I think that that's where I got the idea about our core expectations being the driver in us. Mm-hmm. Can you identify, and I'm not going to try to put you on the spot, can you identify some of your core expectations for yourself?
Yeah, I guess I've felt in my soul for a lot of years that I was destined to do something bigger than myself. And for a lot of years, I didn't know what that was. And I thought, well, maybe if I chase this thing to greatness, and maybe my ideas of success were probably misled. Maybe I thought hey, if I do these things, I'll have a really nice car, or a really big house, or a really, really, really big income. And my idea to make a big impact is really reaching millions and millions of people. And then when you start thinking about that, you go, man, that's how could I be somebody, like you said, as big as Tony Robbins? How could I be somebody as big as Gary Vaynerchuk or even, somebody that's just famous in the space? And I started realizing over time that those people make impacts in a lot of people's lives, but there's a lot of people that make really, really deep, lasting impacts just reaching 2 or 3 people at a very small level. And your level of reach and your level of influence doesn't have to be enormous. It can just be very, very close, very personal. And the numbers don't matter. It's more of the difference you're making and making in people's lives. And then it became less about what I was doing for myself and more what I could do for other people. For example, every time I had a career goal, milestone, objective, you get it and you're done and you're okay, well, what's next? I got to move on to the next thing. And that moment when you think hey, if I accomplish this goal, I'm going to feel fulfilled. I'm going to reach the destination. I'm going to be so happy. And then you start realizing the destination doesn't make me happy. It's the journey. It's the climb. It's the struggle. But along the way, when I'm making other people connected to other people and helping them on their journey, that's when I feel real fulfillment. And I think that truly like all kind of came together in the last few years recently is like, hey, it's not so much about helping myself, but what can I do to influence others to help them be a better version of themselves, help them live up to their expectations of their own self. And if I can do that, then I'm more fulfilled, and my level of reach and impact is definitely a lot stronger because I'm really seeing direct results of influencing people. And I'm not putting this pressure on myself to be somebody that I'm not.
Yeah, I think that your core expectations is service to others. I think that that's what you've learned. Mm-hmm. That service to others is huge part of your inner strength and core expectations. Have you read The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell?
No, I have not.
You need to get the book and read it. It will really, really enlighten you to this hero's journey that we are all on. And it's very impactful. It's Hero's Journey, Joseph Campbell, and it is an outstanding read.
I'm going to check that out.
You will really, really enjoy it because it is true. I call it the butterfly effect. If we can affect one person and that person affects another person and it just keeps going, then we change the world.
Yeah.
We really can change the world one person at a time, one thought at a time that is. And I believe we're all put on earth to impact others. I believe that that's why each and every one of us is here. Each one of us has something to teach this world that will change it. But people, again, are so fearful to say anything to anybody that they just bury it and they don't do it. And they don't become fulfilled. I started out when I was 9 years old and I was abandoned, going to a hilltop and asking God what was going to become of me. And I heard a voice deep down inside of me that just said, hey, you just need to be and just do. And it became the mantra for my life. And I've done everything I've wanted. I mean, I've worked in the entertainment field. I've worked in baseball. I played semi-pro baseball in California. I've just done everything that I've ever wanted. And it's been a journey for me. When I lost my wife in 2006 to ovarian cancer, and I fell apart, it wasn't until I was 60 years old that I looked back on my life. And then I really realized taking all and getting a degree in psychology back in 1968, 9, and living this life, and then having a journey in the construction industry myself till my wife passed away, and then losing all that. It wasn't till I looked back and realized this was all my journey preparing me for these years that I have now. And I tell people, here I am. I'm going to be 73 in August. I'll never retire. I'll never quit because I'm just energized by this knowledge that I have that everything that I did in my past is giving me the ability now to help people.
Mm-hmm. I think, you hit the nail on the head there when all of our experiences lead us up to who we are and where we are. So if you think to yourself like, well, I'm not an expert in this, or I'm not an expert in that. Well, nobody else has your exact same set of circumstances and nobody else has these things, but people will relate to them. They may have things in common that you're going to have a unique perspective on that nobody else can give them. And it's the right message for the right time that they need to hear. So I think you have to just be open-minded that you are unique, that your story is interesting, and that it's going to influence some people. It may influence one person, it may influence a million people, but it's definitely something that's going to be impactful at the right time and place. And the funny thing is about that is a lot of times we don't even know that we made that impact in somebody's life. Like I can think of high school teachers that I remember some lessons that they taught me. Don't remember their name. Don't remember what class I took with them. I just remember this like one saying that they said that's kind of shaped me and through my life. They have no idea that I still carry that memory with them, but they've made an impact. And I think people don't realize that they have made impacts. It's just people just don't share and go and tell them or say, hey, thank you. You really changed my life, but it's really there.
Has anyone ever inspired you to discover a happier, healthier, and more fulfilled you? It is a magical experience, isn't it? Inspiration is indeed very powerful, yet it's often undermined. It can lift you from the ground to the sky in no time. Have you ever thought about returning the favor by inspiring the people around you? If you don't think you have it in you, we have good news for you. Art Costello's online course has everything you need to learn to supercharge yourself and shape your character into a powerful personality. Get ready to discover your strengths and unleash the creativity within. Don't believe it? Check it out yourself by signing up for this life-changing course at expectationacademy.com. That's expectationacademy.com.
I almost thought I had that opportunity at my 50th class reunion because elementary school, middle school, and high school were brutal for me because I was considered outsider. I was ostracized and all that. And one day I had a teacher, he was my social studies teacher, and I was in the 7th grade, and I was athletic. So, I could always stand up for myself physically. It was a mental aspect of kids not bullying, but just saying nasty, mean things and, just being kids sometimes. And I had been having a particularly rough day. And Paul King, my social studies teacher, came up behind my desk and he leaned over and whispered in my ear. And he said, "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay. You're going to be great." And to this day, I just told you the story. I knew his name, Paul King. I mean, it just had such an impact on me that it just reinforced what I had been learning as a 9-year-old up on that hill and hearing God talk through my inner being saying, "Hey, it's going to be okay. You just have to do." Mm-hmm. And at that exact time that he did that, it was so powerful to me. And I hope that people out there that are listening know when people whisper something in their ear or they shout it in their ear, or they do something to you or say something to you, you can look at it either as a benefit or you can look at it from the negative standpoint that they're after you. I think I've always chosen to be positive about things because I always knew, back to that thing, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. It's crazy how those things work out and they're big moments in our lives, but we have to be open to the message and realize like everything kind of happened for a reason. And that message wasn't there by accident. It was there to shape you, and you take it and you run with it. And it had a lasting impact through your life because that happened at such an early age. And that takes you down this path, which leads you to one thing, which led you to another, which led you to another. And if you hadn't had those circumstances happen, you never would have had the experiences that you did.
Exactly. And, I guess maybe that's my next question for you. What was those events in your life that reinforced, or brought, I didn't realize this till I was 60 years old that I had this. I knew that when I was working in the psychology area, I worked in a mental health facility. I knew I had a gift of being able to speak with people and having them open up to me. I always have had people be able to talk to me and open up to me. And I think people trust me and they know my integrity, that I'm not going to do anything to harm their reputation or anything. I hold things that people want inside of me that I've been told, but people have always opened up. But I didn't realize till I was 60 that I could have an impact on other people through it. And I started writing the book, Expectation Therapy, and those kinds of things that I had that kind of, I don't know what the word is. When I lost my wife, it devastated me. I mean, we had been together 38 years, and I never thought that I'd love again. And I learned that I can love again. And there were so many things that I learned about it. But I think the greatest thing that I learned is that, I just need to do and be who I am and let it out and share it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said about being open, being vulnerable, being relatable, because you don't know who's going to hear that message and say like, that was what I needed to hear at the right time. Or even like for me in networking and business, like there's people that sit on the other side of the table of me as a buyer. I'm always approached by salespeople, and it's like, there's always a wall up, a guard, and you're like, this person's trying to sell to me, and I don't want to have to tell them no, because most people it's a no, because one, we're already buying what we need from somebody else that we do business with and we like, or two, we don't need the product. So you're always kind of on guard first. Somebody's going to sell something to me, but once you kind of like relate to them in another aspect, and you have some of the story to share and you're open about that, I started talking about recently this idea with myself that I had an inappropriate relationship with alcohol, and I was drinking more than I really wanted to. I didn't hit rock bottom. I wasn't an alcoholic, but I was just like, it's holding me back from being the person I could be. And I started realizing that. And I started talking a little bit openly about that. And all of a sudden, people that I didn't really know that well came out of the blue and said, hey, I've been in that same boat as you. They had like maybe a different story, exactly how it related to me. But because I was open and vulnerable about it, they reached out and they said, hey, I feel you. I can relate to that. And all of a sudden this, hey, vendor-buyer relationship becomes friend-to-friend relationship. We're starting to chat and we're starting to talk about things other than business. So I can guarantee you in 2 or 3 or 5 years, if there's an opportunity to do business, it's going to be a lot less transactional. It's going to be more personal relation in nature. And I think that those relationships build, those friendships build by being relatable. And they're not always about making a business deal, always a business transaction, but just, hey, we never know who's going to be the right person that comes into our life and makes a huge impact in this. When you have these friendships, relatable conversations with people, your chances of having something that takes this beneficial path, I think, are greatly increased. That's kind of a weird way of explaining it, but
no, I think it was perfect because I tell you, when you started talking this, I started thinking about, I have relationships still to this day with people that I bought from or sold to when I was in the construction field. And what's funny about it is now some of those very same guys and women are coming back to me and asking for advice because they've lost a spouse. And they know that I went through it, or they're going through a divorce, and they know that I can help them through the transition through that. And it makes it much easier. You never know what relationships are going to do. You never know where they're going to take us, whether it being a sales relationship, or I'm famous for being on the subway in New York and just talking to people, or on that. People hate to sit next to me on an airplane because by the time we get off the airplane, I'm going to know everything there is about you, and you're going to know everything there is about me. You get 2 or 3 hours on an airplane and you can learn a lot about people.
What's funny about that is, like, if you sat down next to me in an airplane, like, my opinion of you is based on how I perceive the events to be. Like, if I decide to go, oh my God, there's this talkative person next to me that I just want to read my book or put on my earphones or ignore this person, he keeps talking to me. Like, so now I'm on guard and I'm annoyed. But if I just go, hey, this is a time, we're in this short trip together, it's a brief moment in time, and just go with the conversation and engage. You're the same person, but now I have a different way of viewing on it. And all of a sudden, instead of being like on guard and like, somebody's telling me the life story I could care less about, now I'm, oh, wow, I didn't know that about you. Oh, we have this in common. And just maybe that relationship turns into something that could be very, very meaningful. Maybe it's one-to-one, like, hey, now I've met a good friend, we connect. Or maybe it's like, hey, I just tell you like something off the cuff that like I'm struggling with. And you're like, my best friend is the person you need to talk to. Like, get connected to them. And it's funny we say that because you judge what's going on next to you without even knowing it. And a lot of times, like, you don't know who's riding the subway or who's riding the airplane. Like, you might think like, oh, I'm flying in Southwest and it's the cheap flight, the value flight, but there's probably a lot of people that you have no idea just how powerful of a person they are and how connected they are. They're sitting right next to you and they're just very humble, and you have no idea. You just kind of make it and snap judgment. So I think, yeah, just be open and change your outlook on who's talking to you, because you just never know.
I got a story for you. I was in the subway in New York with my new wife, and we had been on our first anniversary to New York City trip. And we're sitting on the subway, and this guy comes on and he sits down next to me, and he's just dressed real casual. In New York City at 8 a.m, everybody's in business suits and everything. So he sits down next to me, and I start my chatter, and hey, how are you doing? Where are you going today? And, just trying to open the door. And we started talking. He said, you're from out of town? I said, yeah. I said, we're from Texas. And we started talking and everything. He said, what do you do? And I said, I work with expectations. And I said, I can help anybody with their expectations, how to manage them and modify them and all that. And I said, I work with athletes. I work with, people in transition. I work with high school students. He said, do you know who I am? I said, no. I said, I don't recognize your name. He said, I'm one of the biggest sports agents in New York. He said, I represent some of the biggest Major League Baseball, NBA players and all that. He said, I got people that you can talk to, guys that could really use what you've told me about what you do with expectations. And it turned into a great relationship. I got, really some great clients at it. Had I not done it, had I not talked to them, we would have sat there just looking out into the walls of a subway station going by and got off and went about our business. But that's the thing with me, is that I think that one of the things that I need to point out is you need to be able to evaluate when you're talking to people, because I would never want to interrupt somebody who does not want me to talk to them. Mm-hmm. So I'm always evaluating what their person's body language is, what are they doing, how are they reacting to me, whether I take the next step to push them. Because I have sat next to people on airplanes who just have said to me, listen, I think you're a nice guy, but I don't want to talk right now. I need this time to myself. And I said, I respect that. That's okay. But by the end of the flight and we're getting ready to land, they're saying, we start talking and they said, now I'll talk to you, we'll talk to the baggage claim or something, So you never know, but you gotta respect people's boundaries.
Yeah. It's about reading people's body language and what they're receptive to, and building trust, I think, is important. And that's all about how you react and relate and stuff like that. And the conversations you're having with people, if you're trying to cram a message down somebody's throat, and they don't want to hear it, it's not going to go well. So, well,
that's the old used car salesman kind of thing, the used car people if you don't buy it now, tomorrow that car is going to be gone. Well, that's, the fear of loss. They're trying to throw that fear of loss into you. So I think that, you're right. You just have to evaluate people, and you have to trust your intuition, and you have to really trust in your faith that, the timing is everything.
And I like that you have that approach to people and chatting with people that you don't know sit next to you, because I think a lot of people, myself included, that feels sometimes it's hard to start up a conversation with somebody you don't know. And then you think about is it going to come off weird? Is it how do I start this? So then you don't do anything. And then you go, man, I wish I was more outgoing. I wish I could be like you, that just does things. But then you kind of go, well, everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's a little bit nervous. The person sitting next to you maybe even thinking the same thing, hey, I wouldn't mind having a conversation, but I don't know how to start it up. So I'm just going to not do anything. But you miss out on opportunity. You miss out on life. I think you miss out on chances to just meet interesting people. And I think that's some of the best experiences I've had in my life, is when you meet interesting people that are doing cool things that you maybe wouldn't have met under other circumstances.
Oh, absolutely. I believe that everybody's journey is interesting. That's why I love doing this podcast, because I think that everybody's journey has value. It has lessons that we all can learn from it. And it gives us this sense of community that, we're far more alike than we are different. We are far more alike than we are different. And that is the thing about human connection that is so important. And, I'm going to encourage you, Nate, don't be afraid to talk to people. The most they can say to you is no. Right. And, no doesn't hurt my feelings, because it was said to me so much in my younger years that, it just didn't.
Don't know which direction you want your life to take? Are you sinking deep down into the pit of uncertainties day by day? So, what's the secret to leading a happy, satisfied life? It's taking matters into your own hands. But what if the matters in question are a total blur? Art Costello's Expectation Academy course aims to tell you exactly how you can get some clarity in your life. This course can be your savior on your journey to reinventing yourself. While you certainly can't plan your whole future ahead, you can definitely control twists and turns your life takes. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for this course now at expectationacademy.com. Get a chance to broaden your horizons and add meaning to your life. That's expectationacademy.com.
I want to tell you a little story about how I met my first wife. I was working at Mercy Hospital in San Diego, and I had just gotten a job and was going to a orientation class. And I was walking to the orientation class with a friend of mine who was a nursing student at San Diego State, who was going to get a job there also, who had gotten a job there. So we were walking together across this parking lot. And I looked across the parking lot, and there was a whole bunch of young nurses, because back in those days, the nurses wore white uniforms with these funny little hats on their heads and all that kind of stuff. And they were all walking towards this auditorium. And I said to my friend, I said, holy mackerel, look at that blonde over there. I said, I'm going to marry her. My friend said to me, Art, you're crazy. You are absolutely right working in mental health. You are nuts. That girl is never going to talk to you. And I said, okay, watch. So I went over and started talking to her, and she raises her hand up and she shows me a rock on her finger. And she says, I'm engaged. Don't talk to me, blah, 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 and just blew me off. Well, over a period of time, mental health was on the bottom floor of the hospital. She worked on the 8th floor. Well, the parking lot, you had to go on through the basement. So we would be in the elevator going up and down, and I would see her, and she'd look at me and she'd just shake her head and just kind of act like that. But she got to know me a little bit. And whenever I'd see her, I'd tell her, I'm going to marry you. And she would just get mad. I mean, I'm engaged. A year and a half, almost 2 years later, I'm at my apartment. My roommate's out in the living room. I'm in the bathroom getting ready to go to work at mental health that night because I work 3 to 11. And I'm in a shower cap because I had this long curly hair that I didn't want to get wet before I worked. And my roommate comes to the bathroom door and says, hey, Art, there's somebody at the door that wants to talk to you. And she's kind of upset. And I went through my head, who could that be? Who could that be? So I put a towel around me, had the shower cap on, walked to the front door, and here is Vicky standing at the door in tears. Vicky was the girl that I had met going across that parking lot. She said to me, can you pick me up on my way to work? And I said, absolutely, we'll pick you up on the way to work. I mean, I hadn't forgotten her. I had seen her all the time, and I still had these feelings for her. I thought she was gorgeous, and I knew enough about her. And so we rode to work. Do you know, from that day forward till she died in my arms 38 years later, hadn't I walked across that parking lot, I would have missed the best part of my life. Because she just changed me. And it was just amazing. Had I not done that, I would have never had the opportunity to be married to a wonderfully beautiful woman for all these years, who taught me so much about love, who taught me in death that you can have beauty. And she gave me the greatest gift of being able to tell me that she was releasing me from my marriage vows so I could go find somebody else to love, because she felt so loved all of her life. What an honor. Had I not done that, had I not moved across there and talked to her, none of it would have ever happened.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's a very powerful example of just, we got to get out of our own way and not worry about, rejection and self-doubt, because had you gotten in your own way, you may never have walked across the way and had that experience. So
would have never have done it. Hadn't I walked across there and done it, and it wasn't done as a joke or anything. It was done because when I looked across there and saw her, I saw this beautiful human being. And I just knew that there was something about her that I knew we needed to be together. And I was patient enough to hang loose for 2.5 years. I was, to show you how strange it is, what happened is that she caught her boyfriend or her fiance cheating on her. And she came to me to talk about that. That's why she leaned on me. And she said, I never forgot you saying to me all those times, someday I will marry you.
Yeah.
She said, I just never forgot that. So if you have something in your heart that you think you need to tell somebody, whether it's I love you, or I forgive you, or whatever it is, you need to say the words that you feel in your heart, because that is what really frees you. It gives you a freedom. And we all have things that we can say we're sorry for and ask forgiveness for. I mean, I've done it a million times. I mean, you hurt people's feelings. If I hurt somebody's feelings, I tell them, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. I didn't mean to do it. It wasn't intentional. And I have gone to people and said, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. And it was intentional. And it was stupid of me.
Yeah.
So you've got to admit, you've got to be in tune with yourself and have the expectation that no matter where the chips fall, everything is going to be all right by doing the right thing. It is so paramount to who we are.
That's very, very true.
So
I'm very moved by your story. I really am.
Well, it's just a way life is so intriguing, so precious, so beautiful when we just let it go, when we just let it be, when we live to the expectations that we have for ourselves. And I believe that God has planted the seed of expectation in every one of us. It's how we grow. It's how we become who we are. And that's why it's so important. So,
For sure.
Yeah. Well, where do we go from here?
I don't know. This is your show. What's your next question?
Well, we're getting up on our time, but I want people to know how they can get a hold of you.
Easiest place to find me is my website, natepeo.com. That's NATE, P as in Paul, E as in Echo, O as in Orange.com. And my podcast, my social media links, they're all on there, and you can find me there.
Yeah, and everything will be in the show notes. My audience knows that the show notes are just chock full of places to find you and good information, transcripts of the show and all that. So
this has been a great experience. It's been great conversing with you the second time. We got cut short the first.
Well, I knew that it would be great.
Yeah.
My expectation was great. You're a good human being.
Thank you.
And it comes through, and I'm going to encourage the audience to reach out and get a hold of you and support you. I certainly will. I'm here for you. Help you any way I can, Nate.
All right.
You're a great guy. And
thank you. And that goes both ways. So if you need anything, please feel free to ask.
You never know what it's going to do. We may be on stage together just talking about what we just talked about,
Let's do it.
Yeah, it would be great. So, well, with that being said, we've eaten up about 50 minutes of showtime here, and it's been great.
Yeah, it has been. Anything
coming up that we can look forward to with you? Any programs, podcasts?
Right now, I'm promoting my podcast. I'm doing one season of 26 episodes. I decided just recently to do that and get that promoted, and hopefully people find a lot of value in it, and then be probably kicking off a second season towards the end of the year, doing some more recording. So just check out the podcast episodes and the guests I've have on, just looking to support them and what they're up to and what they're doing, trying to bring people on to have cool stories that are along the lines we had, which is really about the relationships we build and the people we come across and how it influences our lives.
Awesome, Nate. Really enjoyed it today. And I'm going to thank you. And we're going to take a break from this and let Heather White take us out of the show.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you again,
one.
Nate. You too.
Thanks for listening to the show. Drop us your comments and questions with what you want answered on the show. You can subscribe on iTunes and Binge Network. You can also get more information on the website, expectationtherapy.com.